It began with silence. Then came the heartbreak. Khabib Nurmagomedov, a man who has rarely shown emotional vulnerability in public, delivered an update that rattled the MMA world and set off a firestorm of speculation. His words weren't shouted across a press conference stage. They weren't masked by the roar of a sold-out arena. Instead, they were spoken quietly during an informal interview after a training session in Dagestan, an interview many fans overlooked at first, until the gravity of what he said sank in. Islam is not the same right now, Khabib admitted, eyes slightly downcast, the corners of his mouth pulled into something more melancholy than usual. Is dealing with things. Personal, physical, a lot on his shoulders. In an instant, the mood shifted. For a fan base that had just witnessed Islam Makhachev seemingly ascend to pound-for-pound supremacy with back-to-back wins over Alexander Volkanovski, Khabib's remarks landed like a gut punch. What did he mean? Was Islam injured? Was he burnt out? Was something deep at play? In the MMA world, where legends often carry the burden of expectations heavier than any physical opponent, even a slight crack in the armor feels seismic. And when Khabib, the man who groomed Islam to follow in his footsteps, suggests that something's off, people listen. Not just fans, fighters, trainers, promoters, everyone. And as that tension simmered, something entirely different, and yet eerily connected, was building on the opposite end of the MMA spectrum. While the Dagestani team seemed to be managing a quiet internal struggle, two lightning rods of hype in the Western Hemisphere were locked in their own Cold War. Paddy Pimblett and Ilia Topuria. In a sport built on narratives, this one had all the ingredients of an instant classic. Paddy the baddie, brash, beloved, and polarizing in every breath, had re-emerged from injury with the swagger of a movie star and the grit of a street brawler. His fan base, loyal to the point of obsession, saw him as the next great British superstar, maybe even a future champ. Ilia Topuria, on the other hand, had the scars and receipts. A fighter's fighter. No frills, no gimmicks, no stage theatrics. Just brutal, calculated violence. With a pristine record and a string of jaw-dropping performances, Topuria had begun climbing the pound-for-pound ladder faster than anyone anticipated. So when Khabib's comments on Islam went viral, the MMA community, as it always does, asked a new question, louder and more provocatively. With Islam fading, who's rising? Could it be Topuria? Could it, somehow, be Paddy? The question would have seemed absurd a year ago. Paddy Pimblett, for all his charisma, had been dogged by critics claiming he was more hype than substance. His win over Jared Gordon was widely panned. His ballooning weight between fights, his inconsistency, and his resistance to facing top-tier contenders led many to label him as an entertainment asset rather than a legitimate contender. Topuria, by contrast, had silenced every critic with fists and footwork. The way he dismantled Josh Emmett left no doubt. He was for real. And yet, even as his skill set soared, his popularity lagged behind. He didn't have Paddy's meme-worthy moments. He didn't have a UFC machine behind him. He was a silent assassin in a world that rewards noise. But with Khabib's Samba update, the conversation began to mutate. If Islam Makhachev, once seen as the unbreakable future of the lightweight division, was dealing with personal and physical obstacles, who was truly next in line to claim dominance? Social media took the question and ran wild. MMA podcasts debated it relentlessly. Promoters saw opportunity. Dana White, ever the opportunist, made a cryptic comment during a press scrum. People want to laugh at Paddy, but he knows how to win. Ilia's a monster. But don't sleep on either of those guys. Don't sleep on anybody. Yet, underneath the glitz of speculation, the reality remained more sobering. For Khabib, this wasn't about hype. It was about a friend, a brother, and a legacy. Khabib has famously protected his privacy. But in his eyes, Islam's struggle is deeply personal. And perhaps worse, unspoken. Those close to the camp in Dagestan hinted at physical wear and tear, lingering damage from the second Volkanovski fight that hadn't fully healed. Others pointed to mental fatigue. Since Khabib's retirement, Islam had not only carried his own weight, but that of the entire team. The pressure of being the next Khabib had turned into a shadow that loomed over every training session, every headline, every walk to the octagon. There's a difference between chasing greatness and being expected to embody it. Khabib's update pulled the curtain back. Islam, he implied, was still elite, still dangerous, but he wasn't invincible. Not anymore. And in the ruthless arena of MMA, that scent of vulnerability is like blood in the water. Paddy Pimblett, ever the showman, didn't miss a beat. In a clip posted to his personal YouTube channel just days after Khabib's interview aired, Paddy leaned into the camera with a mischievous grin. They said Islam's not himself. Well, maybe that's cause he knows what's coming, he joked. I'm telling you, mate, I keep winning and they're gonna have no choice. Dana knows. The fans know. They all want to see me light it up. Some laughed. Some raged. But everyone watched. Meanwhile, Ilia Topuria stayed quiet, deadly quiet. His camp, when contacted for comment, issued a short response. Topuria is focused. That's all you need to know. And maybe that's what makes this moment so charged. On one hand, there's the wild card. Paddy, loud, flawed, impossible to ignore. On the other, the silent storm. Ilia, calm, calculated, unflinching. And looming over it all is Islam Makhachev, brilliant, respected, but now exposed to doubt for the first time in years. Can Paddy really be better than Topuria? Not in the technical sense. Few would argue that. But fighting isn't always about who's technically better. It's about timing, momentum, opportunity. And right now, with Khabib expressing public concern, with Islam's aura flickering ever so slightly, there's an opening. A sliver of space where narratives shift and careers transform. The UFC knows this. It's why they are already teasing the idea of Paddy headlining a UK card in early 2026, perhaps against a top 10 opponent. It's why Ilia's next opponent might be higher ranked than previously planned. It's why Islam's next fight may be delayed indefinitely, according to a source within the UFC Performance Institute. Because behind the cameras, the chessboard is being reset. One piece falters, another rises, and Khabib is watching it all with quiet intensity. For him, this isn't just a moment. It's a crossroad. He built Islam from the ground up. He trained him with the same discipline passed down from Abdulmanap, his late father. He didn't want Islam to become a celebrity. He wanted him to become a champion who carried the values of their home, their history. Now, with Islam facing personal struggles and physical doubt, Khabib may be asking himself if he pushed too hard, if he expected too much, if Islam, like him, is finally ready to step away. But there's also another possibility, one that Khabib surely fears, that Islam will keep fighting without that same fire, that same dominance, that the undefeated aura has been punctured. And in that possibility lies chaos for the division, for the sport, and for the legacies being written in real time. Yet as that countdown loomed, fans, analysts, and ex-fighters began casting votes in public. Team Paddy for the flair, the narrative, the personality. Team Topuria for precision, dominance, the purist's approach. The most telling voices, though, were former lightweight champions, men who'd been atop the pile before. Names like Khabib, like Islam, like Max Holloway. Khabib's latest social post, just days after his interview, said nothing about Islam. Instead, it showcased him holding mitts for a young Dagestani prospect. Text overlay, building the future patiently. If that was quiet submission to change or confident defiance, fans couldn't tell. But they saw signal, he's still there, Islam still in the lineage. But maybe the division truly is in a fleeting state of flux. And so, the danger for Islam grows. Because in MMA, while rest might heal the body, absence fuels speculation. Leave a throne vacant long enough, and others will take their shots. Especially when those others have mom-and-pop t-shirt grinders eating off memes, or hashtag movements built on steely resolve and no-nonsense finishes. So here we stand, a torn narrative. Islam, once the future, now on pause. Paddy, boisterous, compelling. Ilia, silently dominating the vetting system of the octagon. And Khabib, watching, guiding, maybe waiting to see which path he and his legacy take next. Which brings us back to your title question. Is Paddy better than Ilia Topuria? The answer, if you want easy, is it depends on how you define better. But in this shifting moment, better might be defined less by punches landed and more by stories told. Less by legacy inherited and more by space earned. So what's next? A clash seems inevitable. Eventually. Paddy versus Ilia. Firebrand versus Assassin. Crowd puller versus finisher. It's tantalizingly obvious. But will it come before Islam returns? Or will both be forced to wait behind that shadow? Just a bit longer. 4 fighters, 4 fans, for an MMA world hungry for new heroes, and haunted ever by the past. This is a moment drenched in potential. The question is who's ready to step forward when it opens. The MMA world is buzzing, but not for reasons anyone hoped. A somber update from Khabib Nurmagomedov has sent shockwave through the UFC community, one that has cast a long shadow over Islam Makhachev's future. At the same time, a separate but equally fiery debate has ignited on MMA forums, social media, and press conferences. Is Paddy Pimblett, the charismatic Liverpudlian, genuinely a better prospect than Ilia Topuria, the reigning featherweight champion who dismantled Alexander Volkanovski in ruthless fashion? The convergence of these two storylines, one steeped in brotherhood, legacy, and uncertainty, the other in brash confidence, cultural tension, and fan-fueled rivalry, has made this one of the most emotionally charged weeks in combat sports. It all began when Khabib, who has intentionally stayed out of the spotlight for months, made an unexpected appearance during an MMA seminar in Dagestan. Reporters were stunned when, during a routine Q&A, the Eagle was asked about Islam Makhachev's next fight. What followed was not the typical composed, carefully worded Khabib response. Instead, he looked down. His voice faltered, and then he delivered a heartbreaking message. Islam is not in a good place right now. Not physically, not mentally. We don't know what's next. Those words were like an uppercut to the chin of fans who had seen Makhachev's star rise meteorically. The man once hailed as the successor to Khabib, destined to dominate the lightweight division for years, was suddenly the subject of concern. Was it injury? Was it burnout? Or was it something deeper, something emotional? Khabib didn't elaborate in that moment. He didn't need to. His body language said it all. He was worried. What followed was a torrent of speculation. Within hours, footage emerged online of Makhachev training in silence, his usual energy noticeably absent. Close insiders claimed he had sustained a lingering injury that he had kept hidden during his last fight. Others whispered of personal issues, tragedy, even. In a rare moment, Javier Mendez, coach of both Khabib and Makhachev, broke protocol and gave a vague but unsettling comment. Islam is dealing with a lot. Right now, fighting isn't the priority. To see Makhachev in this state is jarring. Just a few months ago, he stood atop the lightweight throne, having silenced doubters with consecutive victories over some of the division's toughest names. He had survived the crucible of the Volkanovski Wars, handled the mind games of Charles Oliveira, and emerged with the stoic, impenetrable aura that only Dagestaners seem to possess. Yet now, the light is dimming. The MMA world is left wondering. Will he return? Will he still be the same when he does? While Khabib's emotional update about his protege rocked fans emotionally, another fire was stoking on the other side of the UFC map. Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, known for his swagger, his accent, and his unapologetic appetite, both literally and figuratively, found himself at the center of controversy after making what some called the boldest claim of his career. "I'd smash Ilia," he said during a recent podcast appearance. "People act like Topuria is some unbeatable monster. He's not. I'm better on the ground. I'm better on the feet. I'd wreck him, lad." Now, if you followed Paddy's rise, you know brashness is part of the brand. But this one hit different. Ilia Topuria is no longer a featherweight contender trying to climb the ladder. He's the champion. He's the guy who walked into a title fight against one of the greatest featherweights in UFC history, Alexander Volkanovski, and made it look like a training session. He didn't just beat Volk. He broke him. With calculated aggression, bullet-quick jabs, and power that looked frightening for 145 pounds. Topuria dismantled a man who had never been finished. To suggest that someone like Paddy, who has struggled in multiple outings and hasn't faced a top-5 opponent, would wreck Ilia, it felt, to many, like a slap in the face of logic. But Paddy wasn't backing down. "I don't care what anyone says," he continued. "People think just cause he's Spanish-Georgian and can throw hands, that he's the next Khabib. I've been underestimated my whole life. I'd put him on his back in the first round." Social media exploded. Ilia Topuria, never one to stay quiet when disrespected, responded with a single chilling tweet. "Anytime. Anyway, I'll make you bleed for those words." The tension between the two dates back to a backstage scuffle at UFC London, when Topuria confronted Paddy over past comments, leading to a near-physical altercation before security stepped in. That incident, while brief, had a long shelf life. The cultural tension, Dagestan versus Liverpool, discipline versus chaos, reserved stoicism versus wild bravado, made it more than just a spat between fighters. It became symbolic. Now, with the added stakes of Khabib's revelation and Makhachev's uncertain future, this parallel story takes on even greater meaning. Topuria, many believe, is already walking the path that Makhachev was once destined to dominate. He is undefeated, he is dangerous, and he carries the kind of quiet, lethal confidence that makes fans believe he may not just be a temporary champion, but a defining figure of this era. Paddy, meanwhile, is becoming the lightning rod of controversy, defying expectations with every media appearance, leaning into his heel persona, and refusing to back down from fights he hasn't yet earned.